Ardennes. September 1944. Before dawn. The fog hung so thick it pressed into the lungs, damp, silent, heavy as wool. You could wave your hand and lose sight of it. The trees stood frozen like watchmen, their breath hidden in the mist. I stood alone behind the line, boots half sunk in cold earth, one hand resting on the firing lever of a 57mm M1 anti-tank G*N, pointed north. The wrong direction. The forbidden direction. Behind me, the rest of the platoon slept. Somewhere in the tents, a radio muttered static. No one watched the ravine. But I did. I had felt it again, that faint tremor underfoot. Not thunder. Not weather. The kind of deep, slow vibration that lives in your teeth and fingers before it reaches your ears. The kind that told me something was coming. Metal. Weight. Treads. At first, nothing. Then, through the black maw of the ravine, a shape emerged, too smooth, too deliberate. A tank, German, crawling up the slope that no one believed could be climbed. Then another. Then a third. The barrel of my G*N, rotated by hand and sweat and refusal, aimed directly where no one thought to aim. And still, behind me, silence. Snoring. Safety. Maps marked no threat. But I knew. They'd call it instinct later. They'd call it paranoia. But I called it reading the ground. Because that night, I broke the rules. And when the first sh*T landed, I wasn't surprised. We were assigned a quiet sector. At least, that's what they called it in the daily briefings, quiet. The word floated around the outpost like a cigarette puff. No major engagements in the last 3 weeks. The maps showed all primary German supply lines running south and southeast. Command doctrine stated plainly, all expected enemy movement will occur along Route D43. And so all our G*Ns, all of them, were positioned accordingly. South. Our G*N emplacements faced the ridgeline overlooking the Valley Road, the same road where German half-tracks had limped back toward the Rhine just a month prior. Official policy dictated strict adherence to sector configuration. North, the direction behind our position, was labeled as a natural barrier. A steep ravine. Narrow. Muddy. Inaccessible to armor. Impassable. So they said. The maps were colored with it. Sloped hash lines, elevation gradients, even red circles, no vehicle access beyond this point. It was tidy, definitive. Officers liked tidy. I did not. Most days, the command post felt more like a farm stand than a combat position. Officers strolled between tents with coffee in gloved hands, maps rolled under arms. Troops talked of winter furloughs, clean shirts, the smell of cologne. We were 25 miles from the front, a front that everyone believed was collapsing eastward. Nothing moves this way anymore, Captain Loring told us. Not unless they've lost their minds. He was wrong. I kept to myself in those weeks. Not out of distrust, but because something in the trees behind us never sat right with me. The silence. The smell. The way the mist pooled in that northern ravine like breath held too long. I studied that slope every day. No one else did. They cleaned P*Ns. Played cards. Slept. But I'd kneel in the brush with a pencil and a folded survey map, comparing the terrain to what was printed. It didn't match. Not entirely. There was a narrow line that curved down the ravine like a scar, old, shallow, overgrown. Not a road. Not anymore. But it had been. You could see it if you knew where to look, an old machinery path, barely wider than a hay cart. Marked nowhere. I brought it up once. The sergeant laughed and said, "Kincaid, if a panzer climbs that slope, I'll carry you to Paris on my back." I said nothing. He said I was overthinking it. That I was making ghosts out of shadows. That I was too anxious, too mechanical, not like the rest of us. Maybe I wasn't. But I knew machines. I knew ground. I grew up feeling both. And I knew that if the enemy ever decided to break rules, they'd use the place where we weren't looking. The place where we told ourselves they couldn't be. So I kept watch north. Every night before I turned in, I'd take a slow walk to the back of the perimeter, stand at the lip of the ravine, and just listen. Sometimes, I thought I heard it. The faint breath of soil shifting. Not enough to prove. But enough to make me return to our 57mm, the one closest to the rear. It wasn't built for that angle. The trail legs were locked, the spades frozen into forward position. We weren't supposed to pivot. The manuals called it inefficient. Dangerous. Still, I'd run calculations in my head. Degrees of arc distance. Trajectory. The others ignored me. Let the Krauts come uphill, they said. We'll shoot down like ducks in a barrel. But what if the ducks were behind us? What if the map was wrong? What if the Germans weren't following our expectations? That was the difference. The system trusted paper. I trusted the dirt. I was born in Liberty Falls, Kansas. Population 803. You could ride a bicycle through the whole town before your soda went flat. My father, Thomas Kincaid, drove trucks in the Great War, Renault FT supply rigs, mostly, across cratered fields in France while the Kaiser shelled everything that moved. He came home quiet. Built engines. Fixed grain sorters. Never missed supper. My mother stitched clothes from feed sacks and taught me how to mend a cuff before I could write in cursive. We didn't have much. But I had a knack. Not for school, not for sport, but for knowing when something wasn't working the way it should. At 12, I rebuilt the family's Massey Harris tractor from parts we'd salvaged off a sunken fence line. Not by plan. By sound. By feel. The starter had failed. Father said we'd need to wait for parts from Wichita. But I crawled underneath it with a cracked flashlight, tapped the casing, rotated the flywheel by hand, and listened. Deep in the cold belly of the machine, there was a catch, a rhythmic scrape. I knew it wasn't right. Knew it like you know when a word's been misspelled. So I found the jammed coupling, cleaned it with vinegar, and wrapped it in wire from a discarded fence post. When it turned over again, the first pop of the ignition sounded like victory. Father only said one thing: if the road disappears, son, it means you need to find the one they didn't draw. That stuck with me. Not because it was clever. Because it was true. Years later, when most kids were trying to save up for baseball gloves, I bought a beat-up Philco radio with half its insides missing. I fixed it in a week. Got it to pick up signal from Topeka, sometimes even Chicago. The buzz of distant voices felt like power. By 17, I could take apart a carburetor blindfolded. I repaired threshers, plows, even a grain elevator's winch assembly that no one else could make sense of. I didn't do it for money. I did it because I couldn't stand not knowing how things worked. My first job outside the farm was at the county depot, vehicle maintenance. Mostly tractors, but some buses. I learned about vibration. How a misaligned flywheel can hum through the floorboards before it fails. I'd kneel down, touch the frame, and tell the foreman, that axle's cracked, 2 weeks at most. He'd say, hell, Sam, it looks fine. And then 2 weeks later, it wouldn't. That was my mind, practical, mechanical, stubborn. I didn't join the army for glory. I wasn't chasing flags or vengeance. I joined because a man with 2 good hands and a machine sense didn't belong behind a desk. And because in 1942, you either signed up or waited to be drafted. So I signed. Basic was dull. Marching in squares, shouting numbers. What mattered was the equipment. The trucks. The tread on a new tire. The way a motor whined on a cold morning. I was assigned to anti-tank because I scored high on the mechanical tests. They said I had an engineer's brain. But I wasn't an engineer. I was a farm boy with dirty nails and an ear for misfires. They sent me to Europe in May of '44. By August, I'd patched more breaches in G*N trails than I could count. And by September, I'd started watching the ground like it was trying to tell me something. See, the earth speaks, in tremors, in pulses. Most men walk over it. I listened. At night, I'd press my palm against the soil and close my eyes. Not in prayer. In measurement. Weight moves. Vibration travels. And if you know what to feel for, you can tell the difference between a weathered truck and a tank. Between friendly tread and enemy steel. I wasn't a hero. I didn't think in terms of glory or medals. I thought in terms of what could break, and what would fail first. I followed logic. I trusted my senses more than I trusted orders. Which is probably why, when I felt something shift behind our position in Rochemont, I didn't wait for someone to tell me it mattered. I knew it mattered. We were dug in on a ridgeline west of Cromwell Spur. That's where I noticed it. First, the fog. It didn't move. That's what struck me. Fog usually drifts, eddies with wind, clings to trees. But here, just north of our camp, it sat still, like breath caught in a throat. Every other direction, it swirled and lifted with the morning chill. But in that shallow northern ravine, it hung low and unmoving. Second, the silence. No birds. No insect hum. No wind threading the pine needles. It was dead quiet. That's wrong in the Ardennes. Even in cold, the forest makes noise, distant rustle, shifting branches, the creak of a tree trunk. But standing there at dawn, my boots planted near the G*N emplacement, it felt like the forest was holding its breath. Third, the track. An old line of disruption through the undergrowth, barely visible. If you didn't know how to read terrain, you'd miss it. A slight depression. Grass displaced in a repeating pattern. Narrow. Curved. Not vehicle-wide, not now, but once. I followed it with my eyes until it vanished into the fog, and I saw what others didn't, a long-dead machinery path, older than the war. Maybe used for logging, maybe just old French infrastructure. It wasn't on any map. I asked Corporal Jennings, the map man, if we had topographical overlays pre-1930. He blinked. Why would we? That was the problem. We were trusting modern maps in ancient country. I brought my findings to Sergeant Dover the next morning. He had a cigar clamped between his teeth, coffee in one hand, watching a card game unfold between two privates. "Sergeant," I said. "There's an old path running north-northeast. Down the ravine." He didn't look up. "It's impassable." "I don't think it is, sir. The soil's compact. There's wool rutting under the moss line. Something came through there recently." Dover chuckled. "You're telling me Krauts are climbing a 70-degree incline just to what, sneak behind a company of tank hunters?" "I'm saying the terrain says it's possible." He pointed his coffee cup at the southern road. "That's where they're coming from. Every damn patrol confirms it. South and east. They'd be insane to try a frontal push now," I said. "But if they came north?" He cut me off. "Kincaid. If a Panzer climbs that slope, I'll carry you to Paris on my back." The platoon laughed. I tried again. "Sir, permission to rotate 1G*N to face the north ravine." "Just one." "For coverage." The laughter faded. Dover looked at me long, then leaned back. "You think the maps are wrong, Private?" "I think the ground disagrees with them." Another pause. Then, denied. "That's not how we operate." I nodded. Understood. But I didn't stop thinking about it. That night, Rudy, a green kid from Ohio, walked over while I was cleaning my boots. "You really believe there's something coming from the north?" I shrugged. "I believe in looking both ways before crossing." He crouched next to me. "I heard a sound last night. Like metal, shifting." Didn't say anything. "You hear it again, tell me first." He nodded. Next morning, Henderson, quiet, stammered when nervous, dropped his mess kit beside me and muttered, "I saw tread scars. Behind the hill. Covered with brush. Looked fresh. 3 of us now. 3 who noticed what others ignored. But the G*N stayed facing south. By policy. By plan. By a belief that some lines on a piece of paper were safer than the instinct in your gut. The contradiction was simple: we were defending from one direction, while the real danger gathered in another. The doctrine didn't allow for improvisation. Regulations held priority over suspicion. We were told where to look. We weren't taught how to see. So the system stayed blind. And the ravine stayed quiet. But not for long. The rain started 2 nights later. A slow, steady sheet that turned the camp into a basin of mud and metallic smell. It pattered against helmets, whispered across tent canvas, slid down the barrels of unmanned G*NS. Most men slept through it. I didn't. At 0240 hours, the first tremor brushed my boot heel. Faint. Almost imagined. A subtle thrum passing through the soaked ground like a pulse through flesh. I lifted my foot, set it down again, and felt nothing. But 20 seconds later, it came again, heavier this time, a slow rhythmic pressure, distant but deliberate. Tank weight. Not truck. Not jeep. Not artillery being hauled. Treads. I rose from my cot, boots sinking into mud, and walked toward the northern edge of our perimeter. The rain blurred everything into a curtain of silver threads. The ravine was swallowed in dark fog, the kind that binds to trees. I crouched. Pressed my palm to the ground. There it was, a deep, resonant vibration, spaced evenly. The mark of a machine that wasn't revving or accelerating, a slow climb, steady throttle, careful placement. A train driver coaxing weight up difficult terrain. Exactly what our manual said couldn't happen. I stayed there for a full minute, counting intervals, feeling variations. Not one vehicle. Several. More than 2. The earth transmitted everything. When men move, the vibration is scattered, shallow. But when armor climbs, the soil compresses in long pulses. The pulses rose through my bones. At 0320, I woke Rudy and Henderson. They followed without question now. We knelt together at the ravine lip, rain plastering our jackets, and waited in silence. Rudy whispered, "It's stronger tonight." "It's closer," I said. Henderson swallowed. "Should we wake the sergeant?" I weighed it. Procedure said yes. Logic said no. If Dover saw nothing, heard nothing, he'd accuse us of panic. He'd order us back to sleep. He'd reassert doctrine. And by the time he believed us, the armor would be on top of us. "Not yet," I said. We listened again. The tremors came in a sequence, one heavy machine leading, lighter ones behind. Not a patrol. A movement. A push. And the direction was unmistakable. Up the ravine. Toward our blind side. At first light, wind shifted. Fog thickened into a pale wall. You couldn't see 50 feet. The men woke slowly, muttering about the cold, about missed breakfast, about wanting dry socks. But underneath it all, the ground kept speaking. By 0700, the tremors were stronger than the rain. Some of the men paused, frowned, looked at their mugs as ripples formed in the coffee. No one said anything yet, but they felt it. At 0715, a distant metallic clank rolled through the fog. A gear slip. A track adjustment. A sound no weather could mimic. I stepped toward the command tent. Inside, Dover and Loring were hunched over a map, plotting southward repositioning. "Sir," I said quietly. "They're coming from the north." Loring didn't look up. "Not possible." "Feel the ground," I said. "Sir." "Just feel it." Dover exhaled, annoyed, but he humored me. He crouched, pressed 2 fingers into the mud. A faint vibration passed through. He frowned. Another came, stronger. The captain lifted his head, paled slightly, and whispered, "Christ." "But then, the fatal mistake," he said, "they're probably shifting equipment. Might be ours. We stay with doctrine." I stared at him. "Sir, if we follow the manual, everyone here will die." He didn't answer. But the ground did, with a long, rolling tremor that felt like a heartbeat turning into a hammer. That was the moment I knew the system wouldn't save us. And that if the rules stayed in place, none of us would see another dawn. I waited until full dark. No moon. No stars. Only the forest breathing in fog, and the low murmur of distant armor somewhere beneath the trees. The platoon had settled into night routines, some playing cards, others reading letters under flickering lamps. The officers had moved indoors, charts and brandy, still convinced the South held the threat. Behind the tents, the northern edge of camp slumped into darkness. No patrols. No posts. Just one G*N. Ours. G*N number 3, 57mm M1, partially camouflaged under netting and canvas, spades buried firm in a trench of dry earth. It faced south, per order. I crouched beside it in the dark. Then Rudy arrived. He knelt beside me, his breath clouding. "You sure about this?" he whispered. "No," I said. "But I'd rather be wrong and alive than right and dead." Henderson showed up next, dragging a pry bar and a coil of rope. We got to work. First, I pulled the cotter pin from the trail legs. Officially, that wasn't allowed, the G*N's position was to be static, its angle fixed. Movement required clearance from battery command. We didn't have it. Then we dismantled the rear trench with trenching shovels, silent, mud-caked, hearts pounding. The ground was soaked from the rains. That helped. The soil pulled easily, giving us room to pivot. Rudy wedged the pry bar under the wheel hub. I jammed a soaked plank under the left wheel. Henderson packed mud around the base to stop slippage. It took all 3 of us, inch by inch, to rotate the barrel 180 degrees. Backward. The wrong direction. The weight fought us. The fog made us blind. Our shoulders burned. At one point the bar snapped and we fell into the mud. But the G*N moved. At 0110, it faced north. Toward the ravine. Toward the place no one believed armor could reach. We dug new spade pits by hand. No pickaxe. No tools. Just fingers and a busted entrenching blade. The earth was cold enough to burn skin. I checked the angle. Slope. Barrel clearance. Firing arc. Rudy stepped back and said, "Looks like it's always belonged that way." We used spruce boughs to build a fresh camouflage skirt, uneven, asymmetrical, meant to mimic forest debris. I crimped the branches with my boot to match local breakage patterns. Henderson added a bit of lichen to the barrel. From 10 feet, it disappeared. From 50, it never existed. We stood together, muddy to the knees, breathing like engines. Then Rudy asked, "You think they'll come tonight?" I didn't answer. I just stepped to the firing lever, ran my fingers along the mechanism, and said, "If they come, they'll come from here." We left no footprints. Covered the shovels. Washed the pry bar in the creek. No one saw us return to the tents. No one knew what we'd done. No authorization. No orders. No doctrine. Just 3 men and 1 reversed G*N. That night, I slept with one hand on the stock of my rifle and the other still shaking from the effort. I don't remember dreaming. But I remember the silence. It wasn't peace. It was pressure. Like the forest itself was waiting. They came at 0437. The tremors hit first, stronger now, unmistakable. Tread weight, low gear, slow advance. Every 10 seconds, the earth pulsed under my boots like a metronome made of steel. Fog hugged the ravine like a secret. Visibility was down to 30 feet. The moon was gone. Even the birds stayed silent. I was already at the G*N. Rudy spotted movement first, a shadow gliding up the slope, branches lashed to the hull, engine at idle. It emerged like a whale breaching fog, all angles and menace. Panzer IV. Standard model. Likely reinforced. No markings. No lights. Then another behind it. Then a third. 6 total by count. Slow. Careful. Trained. They didn't roar forward. They crept. They knew they weren't supposed to be seen. And they didn't see us. Because G*N number 3, the waste of a position, now faced them dead-on, nestled beneath moss and limb. I reached for the breech. Armor-piercing, I said. Rudy was already loading the shell. I took a breath. Exhaled once. And pulled the lever. The sh*T cracked like the sky had split. In the still of the morning, it was deafening, a single blast tearing sideways across doctrine. The first Panzer took the round just under the turret ring, an angled sh*T, impossible from a front-facing position. The round punched through armor not meant to be exposed. The tank rocked, sputtered, then burst upward in a vertical flame jet, blue-white at the base, black at the top. A scream followed. Then nothing. Hit, I said. Not triumph. Just observation. The second tank rolled forward in panic, too close to stop, but I tracked its treads. Track it. The shell hit low, right into the left side drive sprocket. Steel shattered. The whole machine spun sideways, slamming against the trees. Its turret tried to rotate, too late. The third tank backed down. That was the mistake. By then, the explosions had alerted forward artillery. They couldn't see what was happening. But they saw fire. They saw flashes. So they fired. Blind. Shells arced overhead and began slamming into the ravine, detonating around the retreating armor. One round hit the 4th Panzer on its engine deck. It leapt in place before collapsing in fire. The 5th, a command variant, panicked. Its crew bailed. We watched helmets vanish into smoke, one of them limping hard. The 6th tank tried a flanking maneuver, its turret swinging in wild arcs. But it exposed its flank just enough. Side plate. Rudy loaded. I fired. The round struck mid-center. The tank halted, vented smoke, then buckled inward like a tin can folded in half. The turret hatch flung open like a snapped jaw. No one climbed out. It all took 90 seconds. No other American G*N fired. No command orders came through. No support teams arrived. Just one anti-tank emplacement, facing the wrong direction. When the final echoes died, we crouched behind the G*N, smoke licking the treetops. Silence returned. Not peace. Just the absence of enemy engines. I didn't feel relief. I felt calibration. The numbers had added up. And this time, the rule breakers survived. When the smoke thinned, the world came back in fragments, boot steps, shouted orders, the stink of cordite, the soft tick of cooling metal. Then came the shouting. The company commander, Captain Loring, tore through the brush from the south perimeter, breath ragged, eyes wide. Who fired? He yelled. What batteries engaging? Rudy pointed. Just once. No words. Loring stopped cold. He stared at the G*N, at its reversed position, at the gouged mud arcs behind the wheels, at the spruce camouflage half-charred from the muzzle blast. His mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. This G*N wasn't facing that direction yesterday. No, sir, I said, standing beside it. He stepped closer, slowly now, as if approaching something wild. You repositioned it. Yes, sir. No authorization. No, sir. He stared down into the ravine. Black smoke still curled from the trees. A piece of turret armor glinted in the morning light, stuck like a thong in the mud. I saw the maps, he said. That ravine was marked red. It's not, it wasn't supposed to be possible. It wasn't, sir, I replied. But the ground said otherwise. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he asked, quieter, how did you know? I looked at him, not defiant, not proud, just calm. I listened. That was it. He didn't reprimand me. He didn't shake my hand. He just turned around and walked back toward the command post, slower than before. Word spread before he returned. Other officers came. Then the battalion commander. Then the sappers. They walked the ravine. They found the path, the old machinery trail hidden by brush. They followed it all the way to a fork in the tree-line, where the Germans had built a makeshift log ramp to support tread weight up the incline. Someone said, "Goddamn engineering." Someone else said, "They planned this weeks ago." The logs had been buried beneath moss and clay, braced by soil, quiet, invisible prep work. A stealth assault through terrain no one thought to watch. Except us. The battalion report came 3 days later. G*N No. 3 repositioned without authorization by Private Samuel Kincaid and 2 assistants. Engaged enemy armor emerging from unguarded ravine. Result, 6 enemy tanks destroyed, 0 friendly casualties. It was clinical. Dry. A perfect vacuum of emotion. Later, I heard a general read the report and assumed the figure was wrong. 6. From one position? Facing backward? Must be a clerical error. Someone said they had to pull the map and walk the ground themselves before they believed it. I wasn't invited to that part. I stayed with the crew, scrubbing soot from the G*N barrel, patching the trail locks, hammering the spades back into shape. No medals. No ceremony. Just quiet. The next day, we received an order to rotate 2 additional G*NS toward the north sector. New trenches. New protocols. Henderson muttered, "Guess they believe us now." Rudy didn't speak. He just touched the breech, gently, like checking if it still remembered. That night, Captain Loring stopped by our fire. He didn't sit. Just stood a few feet away, hands in pockets. "If you'd been wrong," he said, "you'd be in a holding cell." I nodded. "Yes, sir." He nodded back. "You weren't." Then he walked off. That was the extent of it. 3 men. 1 G*N, 6 tanks. No doctrine. Just dirt, instinct, and disobedience. After the war, I went home. Liberty Falls hadn't changed much. The storefront still had flaking paint. The grain elevator still groaned at dawn. The wind still ran hard off the prairie, the kind that bent fence posts and scattered porch dust into your coffee. I didn't tell the story. Not once. Not to my neighbors, not to my father, not even to the pastor who welcomed me back with a worn handshake and a nod toward the flagpole. People asked how Europe was. I said it was cold. They asked if I saw combat. I said sometimes. I opened a repair shop on Main Street. Kincaid's machines, stamped in iron over a red barn door. I fixed combines, starters, anything that needed hands and quiet thought. I kept a cot in the back room and worked strange hours. The kids who passed by said I never smiled. That wasn't true. I just smiled for different reasons, when a stripped thread caught, or a seized pump finally spun again. I married late. No children. My wife passed before I turned 60. Most days, I worked alone. But above my workbench hung a single thing, a cracked 57mm shell casing. Blackened at the base, scored along one edge where the breech had bucked hard. It wasn't marked. No plaque. Just there, like a placeholder for something unsaid. Now and then, someone would ask about it. I'd shrug. Just a reminder. Of what, I never specified. Years passed. Wars changed. Korea. Vietnam. Different rules. Different uniforms. But the land stayed the same. And so did machines. In 1991, a schoolteacher from Topeka sent a letter. She'd found a declassified battalion report from September 1944. She was compiling wartime case studies for a local curriculum, stories of unexpected actions, individual judgment. She wanted an interview. I didn't give her one. But I sent a reply. Short. Typed on a steel underwood I kept beside the ledger. I wasn't brave. I just looked where no one wanted to look. She wrote back, asking if she could quote it. I said she could. Years later, I visited Topeka for a friend's funeral. The museum there had a small wing, local veterans, personal effects, photographs. On the far wall hung a glass case. Inside, a replica 57mm shell, positioned upright. Next to it, my quote, typed on aged paper, yellow at the edges, framed in walnut. No name attached. Just the words. I stood there longer than I expected. Not because I was proud. Because someone had listened. It's strange what stays with you. Not the noise. Not the fear. But the silence before the sh*T. The certainty in your gut that nobody else will act, and that if you don't, everything around you falls apart. They called it Kincaid's reverse sh*T eventually. I never liked the name. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't genius. It was just a refusal to trust paper over dirt. A refusal to let rules blind us to what the world was shouting through the ground. And that refusal, That single pivot, done in fog, mud, and fear, kept 6 tanks from crushing a sleeping platoon. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't moved the G*N. Then I think of Rudy Henderson. The quiet after the SH*T. And I go back to work. They called it impossible. They said the ravine was a wall, not a road. That no tank could climb it. That no G*N could fire backward with precision. That no private had the right to change a firing angle without orders. But then the shell hit. A single 57mm round, launched against the grain of command, tore through a Panzer's turret from a direction no map accounted for. The enemy stalled. The line held. And behind that G*N stood a quiet man from Kansas, mud on his boots, fingers on steel, unwilling to look the wrong way just because the manual said so. They called it the reverse SH*T. But it wasn't about direction. It was about listening, to instinct, to earth, to the truth hidden behind rules. Because sometimes, the SH*T that saves everyone is the one no one told you to take.